If you look at how medieval Europe is usually taught today, you'd think the continent was physically split in two. The standard narrative gives us an advanced, dynamic West, completely walled off from a mysterious, isolated East. On this map, Kyivan Rus is placed in a vast void. It's a closed-off prologue, a straight line drawn directly from Kyiv to the Russian Empire. This is the traditional scheme, built by 19th century imperial historian Vasily Klyuchevsky. He framed Kyivan Rus entirely as the sole origin story for Muscovy. Kyiv itself offers a different perspective. Looking at the scale and cosmopolitan design of St. Sophia's Cathedral, we find the markers of a wealthy, advanced metropolis that complicates the image of a remote frontier. To see how that wealth connected to the outside world, we have to bypass those 19th century imperial theories. We need to go straight to the primary documents and letters surrounding the Kievan Grand Princes. When we track the lives of the women in this royal family, the Kievan princesses who traveled abroad, the geographical divide vanishes. Their movements map out a medieval Europe that was deeply and continuously interconnected. The architects of this network were Grand Princes Vladimir the Great and Yaroslav the Wise. Rather than acting as remote warlords, they positioned themselves as major European power brokers. They developed a deliberate geopolitical strategy. By marrying their daughters into prominent Western royal courts, they could forge military alliances, secure trade routes, and bypass the overbearing influence of the Byzantine Empire to the south. This map shows how that strategy played out geographically. We start with Princess Anne of Kiev. In 1051, she traveled west to marry King Henry I of France. She arrived at the French court with massive wealth and a high level of education. At a time when many Western monarchs were illiterate, Anne could read, write, and sign her name in Cyrillic directly onto official French state charters. Her authority was formalized immediately. She was crowned at Reims Cathedral, becoming the first French queen to celebrate her coronation there, and she later ruled the kingdom as regent after Henry's death. She even left a permanent mark on Western naming conventions. Anne imported the Eastern Orthodox Greek name Philip and gave it to her first son, introducing it to the royal families of Western Europe. Her integration into the French monarchy proved the viability of Kiev's approach. It served as a blueprint for a broader diplomatic offensive across the continent. Returning to the map, another connection extends straight north. This is Princess Ellisiv of Kyiv, who married the Norwegian king Harald Hardrada. She bridged the Scandinavian and Rus worlds, physically accompanying Harald on his extensive military campaigns across northern Europe, and eventually settling into the Norwegian court. A third connection forms right next door. Princess Maria Dobroniega married Duke Casimir I of Poland. The marriage secured Kievan military backing that enabled Casimir to reclaim the Polish throne after two previously failed attempts. Then the network pushes down into Central Europe. Princess Eupraxia married Henry IV, the Holy Roman Emperor. After Henry imprisoned her in Italy, Eupraxia escaped his custody. She fled to Canossa and formed a strategic alliance with his enemies, Matilda of Tuscany and Pope Urban II. Testifying publicly at papal councils, Eupraxia accused the emperor of abuses. Her testimony carried immense geopolitical weight during the investiture controversy, a massive power struggle between the church and state, and weakened Henry's authority. This map shows the reach of the Kievan court. Between Paris, Oslo, Poland, and Rome, these marriages integrated the Rus into the internal politics of Europe, directly influencing royal successions and shifting the continent's borders. How does a diplomatic network of this magnitude disappear from our modern understanding of history? The factual record of these royal connections does exist. It was documented by a historian named Mikhailo Hrushevsky in his 10-volume History of Ukraine Rus. But Hrushevsky wrote his work in Ukrainian. Because of this choice to promote his national identity, his texts were rarely read by medievalists outside of Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, Vasily Klyuchevsky wrote exclusively in Russian. Klyuchevsky's texts had the full institutional backing of the Russian Empire. His traditional scheme was translated into 11 languages and exported to universities globally. He structured his entire narrative to legitimize Muscovy as the inheritor of Kievan power. To make that storyline work, he ignored Kiev's Western ties. Consequently, the alliances that bound Kiev to France, Scandinavia, Poland, and Italy were written out of the mainstream global consciousness. we were left with the illusion of an isolated path, leading solely from Kiev straight to Moscow. The modern translation of Hrushevsky's work, alongside the recovered histories of these princesses, reveals a more complex geography. It forces a re-evaluation of Kyivan Rus as a power deeply embedded in the medieval European world.